Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today we're gonna go over the patch notes that got released like somewhere in the night in my time of Path of Exile 3.11 Harvest League. So I've done this for the first time last league, and it seemed like the community really liked my summarized patch notes review with my personal opinion about certain things, and so I thought I'm gonna do it again. So I stick quite some time today into the patch notes, just writing down everything that I thought is like important or like super important. We're gonna go over almost everything in this list here, but still I try to make it as fast as possible, and I only will give my opinion on things that I actually have and an opinion about it, or at least experience about, because I think this is like the most important thing for me personally. Like, I can't give you really a good opinion about skills that got reworked or buffed or nerfed that I haven't played, you know. So I will just go over the things that I tested and played myself and my opinion about certain changes. Good. Small reminder, if you haven't, please consider subscribing. 99,500 something subscribers in YouTube. This close for the silver play button. So if you want to help the channel grow, support, etc., then please consider subscribing. All right. Without further ado, let's start into the patch notes of the Harvest Challenge League. So, in Harvest League, you'll meet Oshabi, an Asmeric Mystic who needs your help exploring the mysterious powers of the Sacred Grove. In each area, you will discover the seed caches and will be able to travel to the Sacred Grove to plant these. Slaying harvested monsters will yield life force that can be used for crafting or growing more exotic crops. So this is something we have seen in the trailer video. So you're gonna, like, every single zone, like every single other challenge league, you know, it's like last league in the Delirium League, we had like this mirror of Delirium, like every single area, right? It's now going to be the same. We are going to find those caches. But the cool thing is you don't really have to, like, these plants will grow over time every time you're going to pick up a cache, right? Or open a cache, basically. So that means you can, every time you're going to pick up the seeds, plant them, right? Or you can just like pick up the seeds over and over again. And what you have planted already in the garden will grow over time every time you click on those. So you don't have to necessarily go every time in there, like every time you see that. But in the start, if you're like to explore the new league mechanic, if you're not a hardcore solo self-found racer that wants to get to mapping in like 5 hours or something, you can take your time. I will do as well. And we'll be in this Sacred Grove from the beginning, actually trying to figure out how this actually works, right? So then we have the challenge rewards. We're gonna have the Harvest Footprint on 12 challenges, the Harvest Cloak on 24, and the Harvest Portal on 36. No wings, sadly, but we had the wings last league, so that's totally fine. And then you're gonna have from 19 on, I think every 3 challenges, you're gonna get the trophy, which most people don't care about. I do, because I like to collect those and place them into my hideout with 40/40. Good, so major new content and features. Added new skill gems. We have the General's Cry. So basically every war cry that is going to get reworked or added to the game, whether it's General's Cry, Intimidating Cry, Seismic Cry, and so on, will now taunt enemies, right? Is this good or bad? I think for me personally, as 99% single player, so not partnering up with Aura bots or something like that, it doesn't really matter too much. The only cool thing is, I mean, if there is monsters nearby that are not attracted to you, you're still gonna taunt them and they're gonna run towards you, basically, right? So it's, I don't know if you're playing alone, if this is so big difference. Questionable. I think, like, doesn't Champion or something have like a talent, like enemies that are taunted take more damage or something? But I think for the typical character, it shouldn't make too big of a difference, hopefully. I don't know. So the General's Cry taunts enemies and summons Mirage Warriors from nearby corpses. This should be some kind of summoner playstyle, I would say. I'm pretty sure you can scale those Mirage Warriors to make them like really good. Probably something, maybe even with like Necromancer, where you have like, for example, like spawn corpses with like Desecrate, GMP, something like that. Maybe you can use those like as a form of a minion based cry. Then Intimidating Cry intimidates enemies, which is great. So the enemies take 10% increased attack damage, as far as I remember. It's like the opposite of the Unnerve. As well as buffing the next 2 attacks, which is basically reducing the enemy's armor, right? So all these buffs now will not only give you something or like a buff, so they're going to empower, or what was the actual word that they wrote down? I think like not exercise. It was a little bit different. Exceeds. For me, it sounds like, okay, your next attacks are empowered. Okay, that is something that I understand. You probably too, if you're not a native English speaking person. Good, then we have Seismic Cry, taunts enemies and buffs your next 4 slams. I think stun, I guess, I always make those small marks here, kind of forgot. I think it's just increasing the stun chance that you have. The Ancestor Cry is taunting enemies and buffs your next 8 strike attacks. So these are for slam attacks, right? So slam is the new attack they're gonna add to various skills. And this is now for strike attacks, can be like everything that has like strike, right? Liquid Strike would be my first impression, but I don't think so. Like Heavy Strike or Pestilent Strike or Molten Strike, like everything that has like a strike in the name is considered a strike attack. And you're gonna get bonus armor and you're gonna have increased melee range. Then the Argent Order support, so you're gonna have faster Warcry use, but no longer cooldown of it. The Penance brand is going to be one of the new brands. It's going to be some energized waves. So you have the brand attached to something and it's just building up those waves, right? Or the energy stacks. It will also spread the energy. But once the brand gets removed, like let's say the recovery, or at least like the duration is exceeded, right? Or you're going to use brand recall or just manually summon the brand somewhere else. So the previous one gets removed. Then they're going to get explode, right? It's pretty cool, actually. Should be cool. Then we have a Wintertide brand. This is something we did not know before. At least I did not. So this is a cold dot base that is also like chilling brand that will spread towards other enemies once removed. This is kind of weird because the way the brands should work now is, you know, usually you have the brand attached to an enemy, right? The enemy walks around, walks towards you or whatever, you fear it, whatever. As soon as the brand is going to get like killing the enemy or runs out of duration or you like something like that, right? The brand falls down on the location the enemy died, okay? That means if you have certain amount of like brand, what is it? Attachment range or something, it could just, you know, you have the monster here, right? It has the brand attached, it walks around, it dies here, the brand lays down here, and now it can jump in a radius towards the next enemy. So that meant on a certain playstyle, you could have brands killing enemies that are not even on your screen because they were just chaining over and over again. They're gonna change that completely. So if you have the brand attached over here, the monster walks, it dies, now the brand will be spawned on the location where you placed it or on the location where you use the brand recall. So this is something completely different. So questionable if this will still feel that great as a brand character, because brand characters like super fast, super heavy clearing and stuff. So we're gonna see. It has to be tested. Then this cold dot is basically the dot that is on the target. This will spread, not the brand, as far as I understand. Then you have the Arcanist brand, something super interesting for me. Triggers linked spells, same as like other trigger mechanics like the spell slinger that we have, right? So you have like, we saw in the video, like Arcanist brand linked with like Fireball. So the brand is on an enemy, it has a frequency rate, you know, and every time it like ticks, it will fire off these spells. We saw it with Fireball. The only question I have, for example, the first question that I had is, what about Blade Vortex? Will the Blade Vortex trigger on the brand itself and make like the radius on the target, or will it still be on your side? I think it should be on the brand because on the Fireballs we saw as well, it is spawning, the balls are spawning there where the brand is attached. Then you have the Swift brand support, is higher frequency but lower duration. Then you have the Earth Shatter. Just reading about that, that is actually quite nice if you use that with like the Penance brand, you know? You want to have those brands expired so the enemies will explode. Obviously, the more frequency it ticks, the more energy will be buffed up, I think like 20 stacks or something. But that means higher frequency, lower duration means you're gonna have the same amount of frequency ticks in lower duration time. And this will now explode. So I guess Swift brand support will be probably a must-have support for like all brands, for example. An Earth Shatter Shockwave that sends out spikes. The spikes can be detonated with a slam or Warcry. That sounds really cool, like you send out spikes and you Warcry like everything is exploding. Then you have the Fist of War support, empowering slam attacks with improved damage and area of effect. Then we have a reworked Enduring Cry, Abyssal Cry that is now called the Infernal Cry and Rallying Cry. Added 14 new unique items, rebalanced more than 50 existing unique items, and added 12 new divination card. So that's about the major new content features. Quick sip of coffee, and I have to use, what's it called, a gavel? No, fork. God damn it, gavel. Mjolnir, dude. I ran out of spoons, so I have to use a fork here for my coffee. Drinking too much coffee. Alright. Minor new content features. Improvements made to PoE engine and changed post-processing settings. I think this means to be also the new Vulkan render. I haven't tested this yet, but I'm definitely sure on League Start I will instantly pop on the Vulkan render and just see if I notice anything. But I heard from a lot of sources that it's going to get is massive improvements in terms of general mapping, and there is not much cluster F there anymore. Should not be. Improved screen shake effects, like whoever plays with that. Added 2 new Rogue Exiles, interesting. Added new Labyrinth enchants for both new and reworked skills, so this is kind of obvious. That they're gonna add something for like the Penance brand or Agnes brand or something. It would be weird if you have new skills without any like enchants, so this is kind of obvious. Improved various skill effects. Yeah, there's too many to list. Updated the frames and passive skills hover to the ones created on PoE 2. So this is something Path of Exile will do frequently from now on, or from the past. They noticed, or they informed us with that on the ExileCon, basically. That means PoE 2 will have like the linkings removed, for example. The links will now be on the gems or something, you know, like a lot of information about Path of Exile 2. But they said there is not going to be too much new stuff when PoE 2 releases, because a lot of graphical updates to the core game, Path of Exile, will be in the next leaks before Path of Exile 2 hits. So when PoE 2 hits, we should have like the majority of all graphical updates. So this is now another one that they're just gonna implement more and more new stuff. So once PoE 2 hits, everything is sorted out and everything works as intended. This is really great. Town enemies now have more visible effect played on them. I guess that's because all the Warcry is now towned. Then you have improved behavior of pets placed in as hideout decoration, hopefully, because god, these. Like when I play the Golem Mentalist or something, or Zombie Mancer, and you're in hideout, they were like walking around. Like, please no. Like when I trade with summoners and they come with their army of minions, dude, I cannot even hear something. I cannot even hear my hideout music player anymore because all these zombies making so weird noise and just walking around. Like, yeah, good. Updated the visual search effect played when casting an elemental spell. I have no idea what that means, but I guess it's just some visual effect. Spells with a Stygian effect applied now produce a Stygian search around the player. Great, I've been waiting for that. Weapon skins from supporter packs can now be applied to both weapons while dual wielding. This is something really nice and interesting, but I cannot even remember, like, I was like, weapon effects do work like that. So if you go to the shop and buy like a fire weapon effect and you're dual wielding, you have to buy 2 of those. Unless your weapon effect comes from the supporter pack, then you apply it on the main hand. It will also be visible on the second weapon, unless you do any other effect on your second weapon. So if you don't have any effect on your second weapon enabled, then you just use it that one for main weapon if it comes from a supporter pack. The thing is, I'm not sure, like, most of the weapons from supporter packs are like 2-handed weapons or something, or I just never really paid attention to that because I'm always using like Seraph's sword because it's my most favorite skin or something like that. But it's definitely a quality of life that there should be in the game for supporter packs, because it works for the weapon effects as well, so why not for the weapon as well, right? Because then you don't want to buy multiple supporter packs, the same supporter pack. It's just, you know, yeah. Added more music to the list of hideout music. Finally, dude. I bought it, but that's a cool side story, actually. I bought the music player, and I choose my track, and then I pressed save, and I could not listen to the music. And like a week later, I found out that I have music disabled in my audio settings. Good. Was almost about to report a bug in the forum, like, hey, my music player doesn't play music, what the fuck? So, added some missions, missing dialogues for Sana missions, important. Improved the Dragon Ball, Fireball, or Dragon Ball, yeah. Visuals, I think they are just meaning the explosion from it, because we know this, there's a video of a guy that makes like super fun videos where like plays the sun basically, because he has so much area of effect that every time the fireball explodes, it's just the screen is like flashing non-stop. So there should be something from the past now. Added an option to prevent other players from using your map device portals in your hideout. This is really great. It happens to me, for me as well, when you're like trading, and some players always have their stash exactly next to the map device. And if you want to click on the stash and you're like, for me as a European player, I'm in a Korean hideout or Singapore or something, I have like super massive lag spikes, like probably a second delay on my actions. I try to click on their stash and I'm going into their map device and you're like, what the fuck are you doing in my map, and so on. You know, this is something really nice to have. Carpets in Solaris Temple tile sets now align with the doors. Okay. Improved how audio is handled for performance. This is something they're working on constantly for the past leaks, and this is something that needs to be fixed, because at some point this is causing a lot of lag spikes. I've seen QDoc and other content creators do videos about how to remove certain audio files or something like that, just because to get better performance, because you have like a fast attacking, fast casting, or a lot of things going on. Spellslinger, Volatile Dead Necromancer that I played. There's like so many balls exploding and so many sound effects layering over each other, and you just get like some really weird sound effects out of your speakers, and you notice that you're dropping FPS with that as well. So they should be soon, hopefully, be done fixing that. Continue to incrementally improve the sound, art effects, and environments. PogChamp. So, Delirium mechanics added to the core game. This is something I was expecting anyways while we had core, the Delirium League, just because if you spend so freaking much time reworking all this with the cluster jewels and adding like 300 new things and stuff, you know, you don't really think about not doing this in the core game, right? So this is why I said in the start, they're gonna probably fix some mechanics of Delirium, or at least like the Simulacrum or something, but this is definitely going core. Not like, for example, I don't know, like Blight League, where you say like, you know what, let's just put Blight League away and that's it, you know. Good, 5% chance to encounter the Mirror of Delirium in each area. This is while leveling, and then once you're at mapping, once you boost your maps with like sack stands and whatnot, you're gonna have a higher chance, and obviously higher chance to find cluster jewels. This is obvious just because there is a lot less Delirium encounters, right? Like past League, we had this in every single zone, like we now have this with the seeds. So we need to have higher chance to find cluster jewels to actually be able to build up a market with cluster jewels. You know, like let's assume the cluster jewels will still have the same drop chance as in the Delirium League. So you're gonna have 95% less jewels on the market, basically, if you only have 5% chance per area to find those. Character balance. Soul of Shakari no longer gives poison immunity. This is shit. You know, like on 99% of my builds, I'm always using Shikari as my passive. Poison immunity, quality of life, you know, like the Chaos Dot stuff does so much damage. Not a lot of characters have Chaos resistance, so yeah, basically this is quality of life. The only thing I switched it was when I was going for Uber Elder, then I took the Soul of Yugol for the reduced cold damage taken, but that's about it, right? Now instead reduces the poison duration on you to 50%. Means if the regular poison is like 5 seconds or 4 seconds, it now will only be like 2 seconds, and you cannot have more than 5 poison stacks. So once you hit 5 poison stacks, you cannot get poisoned a 6th or 7th time, but it still will remain on 5 poison stacks. This is still good and bad at the same time, because usually you're not gonna have so many poison stacks on you, right? But don't forget about, we still, if they don't change that, we still have a small cluster jewel. I think it's called Anti-Venom, where you're unaffected by poison. I used this on my Pestilence Strike self-poison character, so this is also an option to be immune to poison, then maybe even get a better minor soul or Pantheon. God damn it, dude. Get a better Pantheon, basically. Then Hexproof now acts like an immunity effect when gained, for example, or stolen with Headhunter, and will remove existing curses on you. This is to nerf a Headhunter stacking builds, which I very welcome. I mean, I've been playing Headhunter stacking builds in the past as well. I'm not a big fan of it. I always mention it when I play those. When I made level 100 in the 60 Legion runs last league, I also played Self-Cursed Temp Chains. But it's just weird to focus on Headhunter. You know, I really like to play with Headhunter. It's my most favorite item in the entire game, but I always use it as a standalone item. You know, like I just have my regular character. It will work with and without Headhunter. It's not focused around it. So this is just to counter those self-cursed temp chains. So you can play self-cursed temp chains to make your buffs last longer, but once you steal the hexproof, then all your curses will be gone and you cannot get new curses as long as you have the hexproof stone, right? And then dual wield no longer grants 20% more physical attack damage. This is something they mentioned just to create some more distance between the new buffed two-handed mechanics with the dual wield or one-handed and shield, right? So it still will give you the attack speed bonus and the block bonus, but no more the physical attack damage bonus that I actually welcome. I mean, I'm not always seeing it so bad, you know, like I'm realistic basically. I want to have the best possible gaming experience, and if I'm honest, I cannot remember when I played the last two-handed build, because maybe on League Start, you know, at Series Disfavor, Bleed Cyclone, something like that. But usually once you have the currency, dual wielding rare weapons, for example, will always be better than going for a two-hand, just because of the attack speed, for example, the impale and stuff like that, you know. And there was no reason really to go for a two-handed weapon, just because like you're just slower, you know, and I like speed. Good. Skill reworks Warcry. So greater support for Warcries on the passive tree, changed cluster jewels and keystones. All Warcries taunt enemies, as I mentioned above. Then the Warcries no longer share a cooldown by default. The thing is, over here, right? The thing is, since I played this game, since 3.0, I have like 7,500 hours in Path of Exile already, and I have never ever used a Warcry, okay? Not even last league when Warcry cluster jewels were completely stupid and you had like 5,000 life regen per second or something. Not even then, because I just refused to abuse cluster jewels. I can hardly give a good opinion about it, just because if I would use a Warcry, you know, I would use it on a cast when image taking, but this doesn't work because cast when image taking only triggers like spells or guard skills or something like that, but not Warcries, right? And since I'm a lazy player, as you know me, like one or max two buttons, like you have your main attack and the movement skill, and that's about it. Or maybe in worst case scenario, you're gonna place a Wither Totem for chaos damage or something, just for bosses, you know, but that's about it, you know. The Warcries are additional button presses. I don't want to use that, right? But the way they buff these or change those now with making all your attacks be better afterwards and stuff, definitely gonna look into that one. But just so I just want to mention that because I have no idea how Warcries actually work in that way, right? So base use time is 0.8 seconds. This is like the cast time, longer duration, and removed base cooldowns. Each Warcry is enhanced by proximity of enemies. That means the more enemies are there, or basically the type of enemy what is there will be determining how much power you get, okay? That means if you use a Warcry and hit a normal enemy with it, you're gonna get 1 power. You're gonna see later on is like certain things. How much power is like the stage of your Warcry, basically, right? If you taunt or at least Warcry magic enemy, you're gonna get 2 power per. Then rare enemies give you 10 power, and unique enemies like single target will give you 20 power with 1 single Warcry. So you need to taunt like 20 normal enemies to have the same effect than using just 1 Warcry on a unique boss or enemy, something like that. And for PvP, players give 5 powers if you hit them. Warcries now empower your attacks, stackable with other Warcries if the type of the attack is valid. That means that some Warcries will affect strike skills, for example. Some Warcries will affect slam skills. Some Warcries will affect global skills or something, you know. So if you have, if the attacks will be the same on certain Warcries, you can stack those Warcries. Good, then we have the Abyssal Cry that is now called the Infernal Cry. So usually Abyssal Cry was some like dark or like chaos one, right? You're gonna like, you Warcry to the enemy, they're like having a debuff or something. Once you kill them in the debuff time, they're gonna explode, dealing chaos damage, stuff like that. Now taunts all nearby enemies, empowers the next 4 melee attacks here, not slam, it's melee attacks. Covers enemies in ash, this is like super good, making them more vulnerable to fire damage, and causes monsters to explode when they die, dealing fire damage in an area. So basically the same version as the Abyssal Cry with the chaos damage now is the Infernal version. So not only empowering your attacks, they're also going to be covered in ash. This is like a heavy fire damage boost, and also explode. This is like super good. Empowered attacks through Infernal Cry trigger Combust, which converts 60% physical damage into fire and deals 100% attack damage in area. So this is like the next cool thing, you know, like you walk right? You hit the enemy. You have like empowered attacks. You cover the enemy in ash. They're gonna get vulnerable to fire damage, which is basically coming from the covered of ash. They will explode, and you're gonna trigger Combust on top of that, right? So it's like insane for any kind of fire-based build. Like, going to be so cool, actually. Explosions from slain enemies are like 8% of monster max life. This is like super good. Remember, Explode Chest is 3% of life. Then you have the chaos-based versions with like 20% and 25%, a quarter of the life, actually. I think bleed pops are like 10% or something, or 15. So 8% is definitely enough, because if you ever use an Explode Chest and you see those chain reactions, this is 3%, right? And this is now 8%, although it's fire damage still, right? Enemies covered in ash take 3% increased fire damage per 5 power up to 20%, 1% increased area of effect per 1% quality gem, and new gem icon added. I mean, obviously, it's not Abyssal Cry anymore, it's Infernal Cry. So I guess it's just like some makeover of the Abyssal Cry and just making it red or fiery or something. So then we have the Rallying Cry. Now taunts all nearby enemies, empower the next 5 melee attacks, gives nearby allies a buff based on the damage of the user's weapon, so it's based on your weapon. Base duration is 5 seconds on gem level 1, higher, I think 5.9 seconds on gem level 20. Buff grants and added attack damage equal to 3% of the damage of your main hand weapon per 5 power, up to maximum of 20 percent damage, basically, right? And don't forget, the power is basically what kind of enemies and how many enemies you're gonna hit there. So counts both allies and enemies in range for power. This buff has 100% more effect on your minions. Empowered attacks deal 5% more damage per affected ally, up to 25%. So if you are like minions or something, it's like 25, like 5 minions, and 1% increased AoE per quality. Then you have Enduring Cry. Now taunts all nearby enemies and grants endurance charges. Gives a brief burst of life regen, resistance, and physical damage reduction based on your endurance charges. The base duration is 2 seconds. Grants 1 endurance charge per 5 power with a minimum of 1. So every time you use it, you're gonna have always the +1 endurance charge. Buff grants 2% all res, 2% physical damage reduction per endurance charge, and 120 life regen. The cool thing is, an endurance charge already gives you 4 all res and 4% physical damage reduction, as far as I remember. Let me quickly check. Endurance charge. I think it was 4 and 4. Yeah, 4% physical damage reduction, 4% all resistance, right? And thing is, wording-wise, it says all resistance on the patch notes, but I think it's meant to be elemental resistance and not chaos resistance as well. Because if you have all resistance, then it's also chaos resistance. But I guess it's meant elemental resistance because this is exactly what the endurance charge is also doing. Good. So every endurance charge will not give you 4 and 4. It will give you 6 and 6. As long as you have the Enduring Cry up, right? So if you have 10 endurance charges, you're gonna have 60 all res and 60% physical damage reduction. This is like really insane. And up to like a 2000 life regen on gem level 20. 2000 life regen is like sick, dude. Sorry. So now Sunder now slams the ground, creating a slow wave of churning terrain that damages that damages enemies in a sequence of areas in front of you. Enemies hit by the wave will release damaging shockwave in an area around them. Using a skill again will stop the previous wave. Then the wave is creates 5 areas, but cannot stop before creating 2 areas. I'm not sure if this is like an internal cooldown or something, or you can spam those and you will have 2 areas on every single attack and 5 areas on the last one once you stop using the Sunder. There is a delay between areas the wave creates, but it has a higher reduced delay on the more you level up the gems, up to 25% reduced delay. The wave can cause a shockwave from up to 5 enemies. The wave gains +2 of the radius of each area in the sequence. Shockwave now deals 40% less damage from 60%, and gains more area of effect as the gem levels up to 19%. So I guess like it's 20% gem level 23 or something. Should actually be 22, 21, something like that. So then we have the reworked Tectonic Slam. So usually how Tectonic Slam works, you have like you have your charges, right? You just slam the ground, and you have I think like 35% chance or so with every hit that you consume an endurance charge and have like an empowered Tectonic Slam with like more damage and more area of effect. This is from the past. This is not working anymore. So no longer has a chance to consume an endurance charge to create a charge slam. Now consumes an endurance charge every third time you create a fissure, like this ground, right? Like every third attack, you're gonna remove one of those. Gains 5% more area of effect and 5% branching fissure chance per endurance charge, and damage effectiveness got heavily buffed from, or at least heavily buffed, 10% on the lower side and 20% up to the gem level 20. It's just weird for now when I think about, if you don't have endurance charges and you slam the ground and it would be an empowered slam, then you don't get one just because you don't have endurance charges, right? So now consumes an endurance charge every third time you create a fissure. It's like, I'm not sure if the fissure is actually the charge slam, right? I mean, the fissure, what does that mean? It's like the earthquake, the shattering ground here on the floor, but this is like every slam, right? So I assume that you just consume an endurance charge every third charge slam or something. I'm not too sure. It's just probably some language barrier over here. But anyways, skill balance. So mana cost. This is something they changed because if you had so much minus mana cost, let's say you have Cyclone, it has like 9 mana cost, right? And you run like the 3 times the Amulet and Double Ring with like a -3 mana cost of channeling skills. Then you mouse over the Cyclone, it says there is not even mana cost here, it just disappeared. It's just saying Cyclone with DPS. Now it's going to be shown with 0 mana cost because Vaal skills are actually skills, for example, that have really no mana cost, right? So they just want to different what is a skill that has no mana cost or what is a skill that has mana cost, but it just got reduced to 0. So brands had their detached duration reduced. So this is basically once they lay on the floor and they are not attached to a target. Brand recall does not refresh the duration of brands. This is bleh. Like in the perfect scenario, you had like your brand recall with like enhance, empower setup or something. So in the start of a map, you just place down your 5 brands or something, and then you were just walking around pressing one button all the time, always like brand recall, and you're gonna always sap your brands to you. This doesn't work anymore because the thing is, you have like 10 seconds on brand, for example, your brand recall, they get like an additional 2 or 3 seconds duration, but your brand recall only had like 2 seconds, right? So you could technically, with the right gear and investment, you could place your first 5 brands in the start and permanently pressing brand recall, and you will have the same 5 brands and when the map is done, basically, right? Because you got always refreshed, and adding more duration. So this is from the past. GGG wants us to hammer the brand button instead of brand recall button. Still, brand recall is still great if you're having like scenarios where you want to swap your 5 brands to one location rather than using your skill 5 times, basically. Added new brand skill, tree clusters, keystones, and support gems. When an enemy dies that had a brand attached, the brand will return to its original location. This is something I talked before about it, how brands work now, you know, like, or how they worked in the past, you know. The brand is attached to the enemy, and once it dies, it's just on the floor where the enemy dies. Now it's back to the location where you actually initially casted. This should be heavy impacting your quality of life with brand skills. But I don't really want to say brand is now shit, don't play it and stuff, you know. It just has to be tested. How does it feel like, you know? It reads really bad, so probably not recommendable, but in the other hand, once you test it, it just might not be that bad at all, or not really too noticeable. So slams, several existing skills are now tagged with a slam skill, slam skills, right? So they're tagged. So basically we probably have like +2 level of socketed slam skills or something as an implicit or something. It's just the tag of it, what it counts for. And then they improved the totems AI for certain skills like Blade Blast or Corpses for a detonate that. Then we have a specific skills. So this is like the list of skills to get changed, basically, right? So this is like really big reworked things here, new things, right? This is just like minor changes to certain things like buffing or nerfing certain things, like a little bit of damage improvements or something, so nothing too special. The Arcane Cloak has mana cost of 0 rather than no mana cost. We talked about that on the top. Arctic Breath like has now the name Creeping Frost, so not anymore Arctic Breath. Basically, there were some how you say calculating issues with like greater multiple projectors or something, that it only counts level 1 instead of level 20 if you had a level 21, and yeah, some calculation like that. Other than that, it's getting a minor damage boost with the initial hit. The initial hit doesn't really matter too much. It's more about Arctic Breath like Cold Dot, right? And it also has, yeah, 10 DPS increased base damage. So it will have an impact once you really get heavily into Cold Dot stacking and all these modifiers, because it always gets calculated from the base damage that you have. But, you know, it's like 10 damage difference from the base level, so it's not going to be the best of the best of the best new meta, right? So just some minor changes. Armageddon brand has a little bit changed. It now activates every 0.75 and also has some damage increase over there. Now has an added damage effectiveness of 85 from 75, so also above there. And now deals 120% more damage with Ignite at gem level 1 and up to 250 more at gem level 20 from 180. So overall, a pretty big buff. But don't forget about all the brands now work differently, so I can't really say, oh my god, this is like the sickest brand at all, you know, like, as I said, brands getting changed, the way brands work getting changed, we have new support gems, but the base damage of Armageddon brand is getting buffed. But I think, like, I'm not seeing a lot of people using Armageddon brand, but the ones that are using it, it's just busted for single. It's like insane for single target. So it's questionable if this big buff here is actually necessary, or is it just because the way it works now. Good. Ball Lightning now deals, and it has a little bit of increased area effect on top of that. Yeah. So Ball Lightning now deals 3 to 57 damage, so a slight buff over there as well. On the upper hand side, now has a higher damage effectiveness and also has a little bit higher mana cost, and on the start and a little bit less on the end. I think it's like, yeah, wow, cool. Beer Trap now has an added damage effectiveness of 260%. Like, who would ever use that? They can get it to 1000%, nobody's going to use that. Okay, with 1000% probably. Then Body Swap improved the targeting behavior of triggered Body Swap when nothing was targeted. It now priorities corpses if they are any near to your targeted location. Not really using Body Swap at all. Like, sometimes, or like 6-7 leagues ago, I used this once with like a Righteous Fire, Volatile Dad, Juggernaut with Body Swap with Poet's Pens. That was a great build, but it was like the old Poet's Pens. They worked a little bit different. Brand Recall no longer refers to the duration of recalled brands. Talked about that before. And now spend 20% of each recalled brand mana cost to activate them when they are recalled. Okay, now has a cooldown of 4 seconds from 3. And now gains up to 40% increased cooldown recovery speed at gem level 6 from 50%. So basically that's, yeah, a nerf on the brand recalls. But I don't think brand recall, it's just this line here. No longer refresh the duration of recalled brands. This is something that I was talking about before, when you just like use the same 5 brands and just permanently recall them rather than casting new brands overall. Cyclone no longer makes you immune to stun while channeling. This is going to be impactful, but I don't know how much it will be. So basically, once it was in the past, when you're cycloning, you were immune to stun, so you can just cyclone every pack, you know. But if you would get a big hit, you're gonna get a small stun there, right? So it will probably stop your channeling, your cyclone. Basically, you have to start over again. So not too sure what impact that will have. Dual Strike never used, now deals base damage and has an added damage effect of 125 up to 190, so a slight buff on the Dual Strike. Earthquake Aftershocks no longer have added attack physical damage. This is quite hard towards the Facebreaker characters. I've talked to a friend, I mean, I personally never played Facebreakers, but the reason why so many people go with Berserk on Facebreakers is because of the sheer amount of attack physical damage that then you're gonna apply the 800% more physical damage from the Facebreaker gloves, right? And if the Aftershock does not have added attack physical damage and other sources, right, where they remove the attack physical damage and added like percentage physical damage, it's like a huge nerf there. Aftershocks now deals 150% more damage with hits and ailments, can now be used while unarmed. That is great. can now be used while unarmed. Think about it. The feasting character. What was it called? Yeah, my feasting infernal blow, like guide to feasting. I made a video about this deck stacking character. That was like great. And now we have Earthquake as well. With Warcries, definitely gonna play that. Holy shit. Like, I really love the deck stacking character. It was one of my favorite characters last league. The one with nothing, all for nothing thing. And now with Earthquake, with the Warcries, count me in, dude. I think I'm in there. That's great. Okay, Fireball now has an added damage effective of 240. Is like big buff there. No longer gains additional explosions radius as the gem levels up. Don't think this is too necessary at all. Now gains additional explosions radius based on the distance the projectile has traveled as the gem levels up. Okay, now gains 1% increased projectile speed per gem quality. And chance to ignite per gem quality. I don't think if you play Fireball with Ignite and you play an Ignite build, it shouldn't be too hard to reach 100% Ignite chance, to be honest. So projectile speed is always nice to have. So Firestorm now deals 7 to 11, so that's a buff there, and has damage effect of 45, so a general buff for Firestorm. Never played. Freezing Pulse now has added I mean, this is the good thing, right? They just check now what skills are good, what skills are bad. Why are they bad? Oh, they do no damage. Let's buff them. Okay, this is the way it should work, right? Now people will think like, hey, Firestorm got nerfed, we could make a Firestorm build. And please, if I'm not gonna read Spectre's Shield Throw here, where is it? Orb of Storms, Perforate. No Spectre's Shield Throw. Oh, fuck off, GGG. The Spectre's Shield Throw is fucking garbage, right? You can get another 100% damage if... maybe next league. Maybe next league. Freezing Pulse now has an damage effective of 200%, so that's a 25% overall buff, I guess. Frostbolt now has an added damage effective of 220, up from 160. Big buff there. But I think the only Frostbolt characters that I was playing were like cast on crit for the Ice Novers, and then you scale the Ice Nova damage because they were popped on the Frostbolt. So a pure Frostbolt class. Wait, what about the totems, like Frostbolt totems or something? That might be a heavy buff right there. Ground Slam no longer has attack physical damage, as mentioned before, now deals base damage and has an added damage effect of 115 to 150. This is a big buff there as well. No longer tagged as physical gem. Why not? Ground Slam is used with a weapon, isn't it? So why shouldn't it not be physical? Well, Herald of Purity, big nerf there. No longer grants added physical damage with spells and attack. Now grants 9% more physical damage at gem level 1, up to 12% more physical damage at gem level 20. No, I think Herald of Purity is absolutely dead. You know, a friend of mine loves to play the Herald of Purity Summoner, where you actually play around as minions. It's dead. You know, what is 12% more physical damage? 12%. You know, it's like three frenzy charges is 12% more overall damage, right? So I think this is something from the past, as well as the nerfed synthesis rings, you know, Circle of Nostalgia, all of that things, they are heavily nerfed. So I think Herald of Purity should be completely gone, I guess. Herald of Thunder no longer has 0.4 seconds cooldown on the storm repeatedly striking the same enemy. Now favors striking enemies that have been struck fewer times. Now deals 1 to 31 damage. Okay, up to 1100 from, so Herald of Thunder nerf. Less damage effectiveness. I mean, probably understandable, because I think Herald of Thunder was the only Herald elemental based where you can build around it. So I was playing Herald of Thunder Assassin last league, and I only used a 6-link Stormbrand without focusing on brands for single target. It cleared all content. Herald of Thunder was the only thing that I used. So basically, I just went into the map, laid on a brand, you know, get the shock effect, pop the Herald of Thunder. Herald of Thunder with the exploit chest will just demolish the entire map. I just run around, pick up loot, you know. So you cannot do this with Herald of Ice or Herald of Ash. So this is like a standalone here. Sad. Because I really wanted to go into the Herald of Thunder Auto Bomber next league as well, because it's like was super fun to play. But I think they also have added some Herald of Thunder rings, right? I think I seen in Sigurd's video that they added some Herald of Thunder rings, so maybe in combination with that, it's going to be better than before. We're gonna see. Ice Crash no longer has added cold damage, now converts 100% fist to cold, and now deals base damage and has added damage effect of 230 to 280, so big buff there. Second stage now deals 50% less damage, and then third stage 30% less damage. So higher impact damage, lower explosion damage. Or I never played Ice Crash, but I know the animation when you like hit the floor and then it's like the ice spikes popping up, you know, so the initial hit will be higher basically on that part. Ice Trap now has added damage effect of 200%. Infernal Blow now converts 60% physical to fire. The question is, usually, how you work with these physical to fire is either you go Chieftain, and you get 50% fire conversion, or you're gonna skill up to Avatar of Fire, and both of those have 50%. So I'm just thinking, is there an item? Because on the skill tree, for example, you can convert 40% Fist to Cold. There is a Fist to Lightning skill support gem, but what sources of Fist to Fire do we have, unless being Chieftain or the Avatar of Fire? And on both sides, I don't see any. I mean, yeah, you have a little bit more conversion, but usually how you play Infernal Blow is pure fist into fire with like Avatar of Fire. So the end output is going to be pure fire. So I'm not sure if this is like any impactful. Maybe I just forget about an item. So Lightning Trap now has a damage effectiveness of 170. So this is a buff. Lightning Spire Trap is receiving a slight nerf. Magma Orb now has an added damage effective of 185, so big buff there. Now chains 2 times the general 1 and up to 3 times, so it has 1 additional chain. Gloomfang, hello, damage. Now deals 9 to 12 fire damage, unchanged, and up to 1002 damage. Now gains base radius as the gem levels up to +4. Previously did not gain radius. Oh, there's a big Magma Orb buff there. I remember Matthew's video with Magma Orb where I felt like I didn't see properly how fast he killed stuff, you know, with like Gloomfang and slower projectiles. He had like so much damage, and this is like a big buff over here. Additional chains, additional damage effectiveness, and additional radius that didn't exist before. Holy poggers, dude. Molten Strike now deals base damage and has added damage effect in 110 from 120, so it's a nerf up to 148. So a little bit of like a buff in the level 20 in the high range area and the smaller nerf in the start. So it doesn't really mean too much, because in the end, if you play end game, you're gonna have level 20 gems, level 21 gems, or at least level 19 gems, you know? So it doesn't really matter too much the damage effectiveness on the low level, just for leveling. And for leveling, it sucks anyways if you don't have Ancestral Call or other things that support it. Projectiles now have a minimum travel distance of 2 units from 6, and a maximum travel distance of 25 from 20. Okay. Modifiers to projectile speed as well as modifiers to area of effect now affect the distance projectiles can travel. Like, since the rework of Molten Strike, I've seen videos of it, and once I see videos on YouTube from it, I said I don't want to play this because my PC probably cannot handle it, because it's an insane clusterfuck with like Awakened Ancestral Call, maybe Tribal Fury, maybe the Hunter Gloves with +1 strike range, right? You just can't explode the whole screen. Like, there is going to be so many pop spots where the projectile is going to fall off, right? So, ooh. And I just miss the old Molten Strike, to be honest. So, Aura of Storms now has a damage effectiveness of 65, so a small nerf over here, probably for the racers. An arrow which caused Orb Storm Strike's frequency to benefit doubly from increased cast speed was fixed, which has affected the balance of the skill, particularly for high cast speed builds. Perforate is actually a great skill, but super underused, I would say. Getting nerfed on the damage effectiveness. Okay, getting nerfed on the damage effectiveness, but has added flat physical damage is great. Now creates 7 spikes, that's great, from 6, so 1 additional. Now creates 2 additional spikes if you've changed stance recently. Well, why would you change stances other than going for single target that you only need for map bosses or bosses in general? Now only 75% less damage while in blood stance. Now has more area of effect while in sand stance as the gem levels up. Wait a second. Wasn't the... I think there is... Wait, perforate. You have two stances, right? Blood stance, sand stance. Sand stance were when the cones fly away. This was like your clearing skill. And once you get to blood stance, you had those spikes coming out of the earth, hitting the target multiple times at once. That was like insane for stacking impale, right? 75% less damage while in blood stance. Shouldn't that be 75% less damage while in sand stance, since you have the area of effect? I think when you were in blood stance, you had like way more damage. Maybe I have a thinking issue here, or this is just like should be sand stance over here. Because blood stance is your single target, right? So why should you go blood stance ever if you're gonna do have less area of effect and do way less damage in here? Great. So Purifying Flame is now buffed. Stonebrand now has a base critical strike chance of 6%, so this is a buff over here. Now has added damage effectiveness of 30%, is a nerf. Activates every 0.5 seconds from 0.6, so that's good. Now has a detach duration of 6 seconds. I mean, detach duration, how often does it happen that your brand is laying there and you're not moving and you're like, yay, 5 more seconds until my brand detaches, or at least gets removed at all, you know, like who cares about it? You run around, you place your brands all the time. It's more like, it doesn't really matter too much, I think. You're just going to recast it more often, but it's going to have the same effect on that part. So, Summon Holy Relic has now a base critical strike chance of 5%. That's pretty cool. So now I think it could crit before as well, but if you have 5%, I mean, 5% is pretty low. If you really want to focus on a crit build, you want to get the crit as high as possible. That's why a Hatred base crit is great, or the Assassin Ascendancy for crits in general, right? So you could get your base crit to like 7, 8, or 9%. 5% is super low. I remember my Spectre Shield Throw, I wanted to make him on crit as well, and the shield has, I think, 5% base crit, and it's like super hard to get like somewhere 30% crit strike chance, which is like shit for any kind of crit build. So Static Strike has a rework, I think, or at least like a major change. Is getting a buff in early stage and a nerf in the higher stage. Base duration 2 seconds, that's shit. Now converts 50% physical into lightning from 60. Doesn't really matter too much, because I think if you focus on physical skills and you just add physical to lightning and you're fine, you have your 100%. Now longer causes beams to deal 6% less damage while stationary and 40% less damage while moving. 40% at all gem levels, okay. That's basically the same effect as on the top side, just because, just when you're moving. Like, if you're stationary, it's going to deal more damage, actually. No longer creates a stacking buff and no longer gains 10% increased beam frequency per buff stack. Beams now hit enemies every 0.4 at gem level 1, down to 0.32, so 3 times per second, basically, at 20. Like 3 beams per second. I have never played Static Strike, so I don't know what it really feels like, right? So Wave Conviction has added damage effective of 220 from 1 wait a second. 60% more damage effectiveness on a skill that has already ridiculous damage. Yeah, Razor's gonna be like, oh, I know what I'm going to play. I mean, Wave Conviction is like insane in damage output. If you focus on it, usually people use it to debuff the enemy, you know, with the exposure and stuff. But this one, holy shit. Like a 6-link Wave of Conviction. I've seen some Razors going with a 4-link Wave of Conviction. It does ridiculous amounts of damage. And now with that buff here, that's interesting. Val's kill balance. Let me open the window. It's getting pretty hot in here. We are having summer right now. Get some fresh air in. So, Val Earthquake. Base attack speed is now 75% to match Earthquake from 100%. Has a damage effectiveness of 60% and up to 71 at gem level 20. So this is like, yeah. It's just some rebalance, most likely. Fireball has more damage effectiveness, as we saw on the Fireball rework. So Val Fireball will have the same kind of, projectile speed as well. So pretty much the same as on the Fireball. Val Ground Slam, no longer added attack physical damage, pretty much the same as on the Ground Slam, because usually it happened actually. Arc, for example, is a good example, where They nerf Arc, but they leave Val Arc the same as it is, right? This time around, they change Ground Slam, so they have to change Val Ground Slam as well, and probably with the most other things as well, like Val Lightning Trap, with the damage effectiveness of 170, so a big buff there. And Val Molten Shell has big changes, because they said Val Molten Shell, and Molten Shell in general, or especially Val Molten Shell, was way too strong. You could get like so much armor just with popping like a Granite Flask or something like that. It was ridiculous. So now grants 20% more armor at gem level 1, up to 29% at gem level 20. I think you got flat armor before. So now they want to really make this skill great for armor stacking characters rather than like every character, basically. But yeah, I'm not a hardcore player, so I'm not really using Val Molten Shell at all. Or too much, you know. Depleted up to 9,000% from 3,000. Now removes and is removed by any other guard skill. This is like a big nerf there, right? Because I think usually you popped your Val Molten Shell, and even if you had a cast image taking Mortal Call, the Val Molten Shell did not get removed, right? Now it should get removed. So you're gonna pay a little bit more attention with your guard skills. So, support gem balance, Archmage support. Support skills again now added lightning damage equal to 70% of mana cost at gem level 1, unchanged up to 108. So this is a nerf there. Was obvious, or was expected, because Archmage builds were insane, dude. They did just way too much damage. Shockwave support now gains additional use at gem levels up to 4 at gem level 20. This is something people usually never use. Like, this is actually... probably you will not even notice that as well. Shockwave support is a support gem that can be used, but I think only with maces. So you attacked something and you had like shockwaves popping like once every second or something, or once every 2 seconds or so. This is like people went away from two-handed builds anyways, right? And if you went two-handed builds, you either went with a Staff Force, like sword-based, right? Cast on crit or something, or you went with like a big axe because it has the most damage, right? This is something that is used for mazes. Like, I cannot remember ever playing a build with a two-handed mace unless it was a unique item, and the unique base type was actually a mace, right? Good. Some more buffs. Slow projectiles. Less projectile speed from 30 up to 30% less gem level 20. So basically, they have now less projectile speed, right? So they travel faster when the gem levels up, basically. So... God, this is so much information here. So, passive tree balance. Now, new support for several mechanics introduced in the past, such as Rage, Unleash, Corpse Manipulation, War Cries, Heralds, and Banners. I mean, that's kind of obvious, because you cannot really add new things and then not add something reliable on the tree itself. You know, you should be able to focus on Heralds. I think the Herald cluster duels last league were the first time you actually could make your heralds better in this part, right? So now we should have herald clusters on the tree itself, which is great. Build diversity, right? Rework passive skill tree clusters to give every cluster its own identity and function. So basically, that means that some clusters just did the same. You know, like here crit multiplier, here crit strike chance, here this, here that, right? I think they changed that every single cluster, as it says here, has its own identity. So you want to really get this one because it's not only crit, it has other functions as well that might be cool for your build as well. Added many Legion Jewel keystones on the core tree. Added new keystones to support new mechanics. Nerfed certain clusters on the skills. And buffed weak ones for more pathing choices. I mean, you know, if you open your path of building or your skill tree in general, right? I think 9 out of 10 bow builds have always the same starting routine. You're always going to pick, oh, you're a crit build, you're going to pick this crit cluster, this one over here. There is always like, if you path through the skill tree, like once you start creating your own builds, right? I'm like playing 30 different builds every single league, and through past leagues, like has been over 100 different builds. And there is like similar trees all the time, you know? It's like never pathing towards the top left side on this build, because there is no reason, because the skill tree points suck, the notes are like bad, there is better notes on the right side, blah blah blah. This is like, there are dead spots on the tree, and I hope they're gonna fix that with this one. Don't forget, clusters is not only meant cluster jewels, it's meant for a cluster itself. You know, if you have like near Crimson Dance, the bleed cluster, right? We have like chance to attack, bleed chance, bleed multiplier. This whole circle is called the cluster, right? It's just for newer players. So Ascendancy Balance, Necromancer, Corpse Pact now has an upper limit of 200%. Finally, because I think you could stack that like endlessly. I noticed that one on the Spellslinger Necromancer that I played last league. You know, the more attack speed you got, the faster, the more corpses you consumed, you had like ridiculous amounts of attack speed, like way more than this one, right? So that's okay nerf, I would say. It has to stop somewhere. Chieftain got a couple of reworks based on the Warcries, or based on the Slam skills. So you now have this is, I think, new one. Tawa for Strength has been redesigned, or at least old name, new design, and adds level 20 Tawa's chosen skill, which is triggered when you use a slam attack, creating an image which mirrors your slam attack, which is basically your Mirage Archer for slam attacks. This skill has a short cooldown. I think this is going to be great just because they mentioned this in the patch notes as well, right? And then you have the Valako Storm's Embrace. Brass no longer grants 3% more damage for each endurance charge lost recently. Instead grants 50% more damage for 8 seconds. So this is basically an Ellie overload, you know, for Chieftain, basically. 15% more damage for 8 seconds if you lose an endurance charge charges. That's like great. So if you lose one charge in the matter of 8 seconds, you're gonna have this permanently up. And they also changed the traveling nodes to the big nodes on the ascendancy points. For example, they removed the percentage endurance charge duration and gave them percent and chance to gain endurance charge on kill, which is great. Although I think endurance charge on kill is always like not good because you cannot sustain that on bosses. Berserk has now, the Warbringer has been redesigned, now causes Warcries to grant 5 rage per 5 power. So basically, as mentioned above with the Warcries, how that works when you hit like your Warcry on a boss, for example, you're gonna get like 20 power or something, right? If you have less than 25 rage, and if you have more than 25 rage, it's going to sacrifice 25 rage. But if you sacrifice the rage, your empowered attacks through Warcries deal 50% more damage. When you sacrificed rage recently always refers to the past 4 seconds. And also, like on the Chieftain, they changed the small passive nodes. They removed the Warcry duration and added the Warcry recovery speed, I think. So, Hierophant, Sign of Purpose, has been redesigned. It now causes brands to have 100% more activity frequency in the final 25% of their attached duration, 100% increased cooldown recovery speed for brand recall. Not really an idea what... I'm not playing Hierophant. I'm not playing Templar class at all because I don't like the model. I don't like this long neck dude, right? It's personal, you know, I don't want to be a Templar racist or something. Don't get me wrong, right? I just don't like the character model because all the MTX look shit on Templar classes, so I never play Hierophant, right? But I guess it says right here, right? If you play Hierophant, you probably know more about this change than I do. Item balance... This is obvious. They removed a lot of these pre-redesigned enchants from the Labyrinth, like Rallying Cry buff effect, Rallying Cry duration, because Rallying Cry itself got reworked, right? Abyssal Cry duration enchant it's not in the game anymore. It just got completely removed, right? And alongside other things, Essence of Hysterion boots will now drop Burning Ground every 10 units from 25. Who is using Essence of Hysterion boots anyways, right? Added a new type of oil, the Indigon oil, that should be somewhere, I'm not sure exactly, I think between like the purple and the blue one, or something in the middle there, but not all skill trees are assigned on Indigon oil, for example, right? So there are some spots open already. Added 13 new ring anointments that utilize the new Indigon oil. I've never anointed the ring, but as far as I know, it's just for people that like to run blighted maps. It's not like the amulet anointment will give you like things from the tree, for example, right? But the ring anointments, I think they're only like empowering your turrets or something like that, so... Yeah, blight runners will probably like this. Change some existing amulet anointments. Yeah, this is something I'm not gonna go into it. It's just because if you have something anointed that is referring to a skill or to a tree passive that is not in the game anymore, it's going to get in standard, or at least they're gonna get changed, right? If you had this before, it doesn't exist anymore, it will get naturally changed to that. It affects standard, you know, I don't care about that. Added new Elder Slayer influence modifiers to several slots. I have no idea what that is. Moved faster start of energy shield recharge from the Hunter influence to the Redeemer influence. Yeah, great. So, two-handed weapons. This is basically the list of changes. I mean, this time around, I don't really want to go over every single stat here. For example, the Morning Star has an implicit now increased area of effect by 15% instead of 4, right? Like, if you're really interested on what are the exact changes on the... It's basically, they changed all the base implicits and stuff basically of two-handed weapons because it's going to be a buff. Like, they're gonna have like higher physical damage but lower attack speed, something like that. There is this full list if you want to go over that. I think I'm not need to explain that. The Pal Drive, I don't even know what base this is. You know, it's something that you're gonna find out later on once you start crafting those bases, that you're gonna find out for what purpose it is going to be the best thing here. But overall, all of these things got buffed, and I think the Axes got the highest implicit changes. There's only one thing that I saw that is very, very cool. I think it was on a two-handed mace. I think they added some chance to bleed damage over time multiplier implicit 20% somewhere. That was like sick, dude. Instead of like, can't really find it here. It was the one-handed weapon. No, I think it was a two-handed weapon, but it was like sick change there on the bleed modifier. Good. Class of jewel balance. Balance changes to certain class of jewels. Added several new curse and aura-centric notables. Obviously, after last league, I hope they learned from their mistakes and, yeah, fixed a lot of these things or gave them at least limitations, because we saw last league with all these Herald stackings or Warcry stackings or Leech stackings, you know, what is actually possible. Make your character immune, like unkillable, trillions of freaking DPS, one-shot everything in the game just by stacking Heralds, and yeah, you get the idea, right? So here as well, unique item balance. There's like a lot of core unique items changes. I think the heaviest nerf is on the Starforge. Void Forge has also reduced damage. I think Starforge has the highest impact, noticeable impact on the damage. But based on, you know, I don't really want to say, oh my god, they nerfed this unique weapon, it's going to be bullshit, one Chaos, one Alchemy, or just Vendor unique. Don't forget about, they're gonna add shit tons of increased damage modifiers in the skill tree. So not only because the core item got nerfed, but adding all these skill tree things doesn't really necessarily mean that you're gonna have a weaker result out of that, you know? So I'm never really criticizing any nerfs. I think when GGG decides we have to fix something, it might be able that they overdid it with the nerfs, right? We're gonna find this out next league, obviously, because there is going to be a lot of people that are going to play two-handed based builds, and we're gonna find out how insane are these damage numbers, because I cannot really remember any big two-handed build that I have played, you know, so I can only compare those. Okay, I remember my dual wield Impale Cyclone Slayer had this and that kind of DPS. How much damage does a comparable same geared two-handed weapon of the same type, maybe with Impale and stuff, like how much is the difference here, right? It should be that the two-handed weapon should do more DPS in total. Then the list here is kind of like, these are all, they like changed like 50 unique items, right? Or more than 50. I'm not even sure about the most of those names. I've never heard, right? It's not because I don't know these items. It's just, these are items that I see on the icon that I will not even pick up because they're complete trash, right? So if you go over, Arborix is a bow that I used on an Impale Tornado Shot build, 3.7, I think. Longer calls you to deal 30% more damage with arrow hits at close range. You have armor reflexes. The thing is, there's like so much items and so much. It will take another half an hour to go over that. If you're interested, I'm just gonna go over this and maybe stop on items where I think they are like really strong items and what they're gonna change. But LD, I think it's a fist weapon or so. I think it's a fist weapon. I'm not even sure. Never used it. Like, it is something. If I'm planning to use a bow build, right? Physical bow build, then I will check obviously all the changes to Arborix and see if it's worth using. But if I plan to play any caster, I don't care about any change in Alberix. It's just my opinion, right? Once I decide next build is going to be physical bow build, then I'm going to check out all the uniques that would be relevant for my build rather than Apip's Rage, for example, right? Berserker Spite, Peter Dream was like the one that gives you like all these support gems. Black Cane, I don't know, Blood Dance, Brain Rattler. I think it was the weapon for Minotaur. I'm not sure. Broken Face, Circle of Fear, Nostalgia, Regret. This is important. The randomly generated Herald modifiers now grant 15 to 20% reduced mana reservation. That was 40% before, and 40 to 60 increased buff effect from 70 to 100. I wonder what would happen if you use a Divine Up on these. Try it and let us know. Nope. I mean, in standard, who cares, right? So, flat 50% nerf on all the Herald rings. Or at least, yeah, Nostalgia, Anguish. So, all these synthesized maps will probably heavily drop in the price, which is good because they give a lot of experience. So, if you want to level quick, that might be a thing. But we did all these projects with the synthesized maps, if you remember, based on how much profit we can get, but seeing that they all have like a 50% flat nerf, or actually 100% flat nerf if they go from 40% to 20%, from 100% to 50%, right? Hopefully rare rings will now be better, because the thing is, I do appreciate that, right? I think nowadays, if you want to have the top of the top build, you are using 2 of those rings, right? There's no other ring that gave you so much value with mana reservation, buff effect, or increased damage and whatnot, right? I think this is great that they did that. These rings were just too good. They were just too good. Crown of the Tyrant, no idea. Darkness Enthroned. Wait, this was the belt. Now increases the effect of Socket of Jewels by 75%. It's still a shit belt. I don't know. Like, how insanely good do your Abyss Jewels have to be to make this one a good belt? I mean, it's not a Headhunter, obviously. Fevered Mind no longer increases the mana cost of skills. I used that last league, that's why I can remember that. No longer grants 30-40% increased spell damage. Now causes notable passive skills radius to be transformed to instead grant 10% increased mana cost of skills and increased spell damage. So it's like Might of the Meek, basically. Now it's a small radius. Existing versions of this item are not affected by these changes. Is now limited to 1. Okay. That's a big nerf based on mana stacking, Arcane Cloak, Archmage support things. Then we have, what else? Gloomfang no longer costs projectiles to gain chaos damage as extra chaos per chain. Damn it! That removes my Magma Orb dream that I mentioned before. Now causes projectiles to have chain to gain 20-35 of non-chaos damage. Extra half chained per chain. Ah, yeah, this is actually shit. Okay, now causes protected half chained to gain extra chaos damage. That means the more often they chain, the more damage they will get, rather than the more chains remaining. You know, it's like big nerf there. I think so, if I'm having this right. Because the thing is, for example, there is 2 different versions. The one is for each time it has changed, and for each remaining chain. Why is for each remaining chain way better? It's because of single target. If you have a skill that chains 10 times and you get like 10% more damage for each remaining chain, means if you do the skill on a single target, you're gonna have 100% more damage because 10 remaining chains, right? The other one where you say like, every time it has chained, you get 10% more damage. It's like you use like Spectre Shield Throw, you hit the first target, it deals like 100k damage, then it deals on the second target, it's like 115k damage and 147k damage, you know. The more often it chains, the more damage it's going to do. What for? You know, if my shield kills the first target with 100k damage, it will kill the second target with 100k damage as well. I don't need to have like 7 million DPS on chain number 500. Like, who the fuck cares? I need the remaining chains so I have the increased single target damage. Oof, okay. Then Down Thirst, whatever, Limb Split, like leveling items, Maligaros. Most of them I've never heard. Maybe when I see the item, then probably yes. Nagamo's Flame is maybe interesting. Now convert 60% physical to fire from 50. So that's like, yeah, a small buff, I guess. Symmetry, Command, Rolling Flames, Suckerballs, Flock, the Savior. Mirage Warriors have been renamed to Mirage Saviors to differentiate from those created by the General's Cry. Strike skills used by Mirage Saviors cannot hit additional targets. That sucks. No more Flicker Strike Saviors. This affects all existing versions of the item. This change is required to maintain zero performance, as builds using the Savior with certain strike skills were causing enough calculations to put noticeable strain on the servers. It was accidentally missed in development manifesto. Okay, but still the same, like, there is no, like, nerf to this thing. So it will probably still maintain or remain as the best offhand in the entire game. This current change, split personality, important, now limited to 2. This affects all existing versions of this item. This was a much needed thing, you know? Like, every stat stacking character, whether it's strength stacking, dex stacking, int stacking, Whispering Eyes, Kelvin, I'm talking to you, you know, uses as many of these as possible. These give you so much value, and you want to have at least, I don't know, like, if possible, all of your jewel slots full with these, because they're like insane what they give you, right? So it's good that they limit these to 2, because they're like way too strong for any kind of stat stacking build. Starforge now has 300% increased physical damage, so that was I meant before. Starforge got the biggest nerf over here. It's like 100% nerf there, right? Now again, 30% increased global physical damage is implicit. I think it was like accuracy, so that's not going to help this nerf here. Over existing items can be ruthlessly brought back into reasonable balanced state with a Divine Orb. So yeah, great. Standard Starforges OP, dude, 700 flat physical DPS. I guess the new version is like close to 500, which kind of makes me wonder, what about Etzira's Disfavor? Like, if, like, Etzira's Disfavor and Starforge were those 2 weapons that are very, very popular and strong in the early game, especially Starforge. But I, for example, when I use Bleed builds, Bleed Cyclone, I love to go Etzira's Disfavor. I don't see any changes on Disfavor on this part, but I do know that Val X, like Disfavor is a Val X, is the best damage base for an 200X, right? So if you want to get like 1000 DPS weapon, a Val X is probably the way to go, because it has the highest base damage. So if they change the base damage by at least 15%, X is even more. They stated that already in the manifesto and in the patch notes. I think Disfavor will be the new to-go thing on League starts, because it should then be way stronger than Starforge. I mean, Starforge can shock the enemy and so on, but this nerf is significant. And you don't have to forget that the Disfavor gets buffed, right? So we're gonna see. So anything else that I would like to go over? Voidbringer, it's like whatever. Timepiece, Whispering Eyes. This Ice Storm skill granted by this item now has added damage effect of 45 from 30. Kelvin will love that. White Wind, Windfire, Wings of Entropy. It's like so many items. Like if I go over that, all of that, it's like a half an hour. So if you're interested in some of those, then yeah. So monster changes. Monster will be easier to stun now through higher swing damage outputs. Bosses will be immune to stun for a short duration after being stunned and while stunned. Knockback is now based on the monster's size. Smaller enemies are get knocked back further away, and bigger enemies you cannot knock back that far. Hunter Snake monsters will spread their speed attacks rather than spitting all at once. Speed attacks will be handled as attacks and can be therefore mitigated throughout. Abyss changes. The area transitions to an Abyssal Death are now become interceptable or interactable more quickly after appearing. No idea what that means. Monster crystals, other boss and counter elements are now destroyed when Amanamu is defeated. Wasn't there like 2? I think there are 2 different liches basically, or only one. I can't remember. But they're gonna fix that on many bosses, that if there is an active interactions or mechanic, once the boss is dead, the mechanic disappears, which is great. I mean, it always sucks if you die afterwards once the boss is dead, just because there was something from the boss that should not be there anymore. Elrion's Unholy Relics and Sentinel's minions are now die when Elrion is defeated. This is exactly what I was talking about. Some by model Syndicate members who possess now disappear when their member is defeated. Yes. Hopefully, this is what I mean, you know, it happens so often in the past. you do the syndicate encounters, right? You talk to them. You're wondering, should I kill this guy? Should I imprison him? Should I let him free? And then boom, you have like resurrect, and you're like, wait, did I die on a volatile again while I was talking to the NPC, right? I hope this is something from the past now. Sorry. Too much talking here. I hope this is something from the past now, because this is the worst thing ever. You talk to an NPC that is a full screen layout, and in the back of that, you die. Ground effects created by Immortal Syndicate's memo will likewise disappear when the associated member is defeated. You can now quick move items between your inventory and the various Betrayal safe house benches. So that's like quick move, I think, is like when you hold down control. Atlas and map changes. Map tiers and locations have been shuffled as every league. Most maps are now initially found at different tiers. I mean, that's something typical. In the end, since 3.9 or 3.8, I think 3.9. Now 3.9 with the changes to the Atlas, with the Conquerors and the sections, does it really matter? We have like 100 low tier maps that is going to get upgraded because there is not so many natural tier 12 maps, for example. In the end, once your Atlas is completely or finished, you have your 32 Watchstone socket in, all the maps will be at least tier 14, so I don't think this is any kind of impact. It was something in the past when you say like, which map tier is Burial Chamber? Is it tier 3 this league? Is it tier 13? Can I sustain it this time around? Or at least since the changes to the Atlas, it doesn't really matter at all anymore. Unique maps have not moved or changed tiers. Have not moved? I'm not sure. Did I miswrite that? Because that would be weird if that would be not moved. Because every single league, certain map tiers change in the unique map. So I don't know. Improve the responsiveness of Cyrus Storms to phase transitions. This is great because sometimes, even though he has phase transition, the storms are just in there and take like 2 or 3 additional seconds. Even he started the phase again, the storm is still there, so hopefully that's fixed. Improve the layouts of Spider Lair map to minimize backtracking, should be great. Sana can now send you on a mission to find and activate a Legion monolith. I like this. It's like this, if you find Sana somewhere, and she has a mission for you, like defeat this and that boss, or clear out the, what is it called? I don't know, like find these stones or whatever. Now is also Legion Monolith, really like that. Sana League mods available during 3.11. This is interesting. So basically, Fortune of the Favors is always there. Anarchy contains 3 additional Rogue Exiles. If there is not really an defeat every single Rogue Exile in the game challenge or something, who would ever use that? Then Breach is pretty nice to have. Ambush, Strongbox is super nice, but we have those things like on every league. Nemesis, rare monsters have a Nemesis mod. Area contains 5 additional packs of rare monsters, so keep your Ancient Orbs. They're gonna be super expensive. At some point of the league, you're gonna sell 3 Ancient Orbs for 1 Exalt or something. It's insane, right? It is really insane. So Headhunter is chanceable again. Double Influence Headhunter is chanceable, but not Ancient Orb, right? So expect those items. They were like super cheap this league, like 4 Chaos per Ancient Orb. They will be massively more expensive this league. Harbinger is okay, never really used that. Metamorph is quite okay, I would say. And Legion, finally, again, in the map device. I always make so much profit with Legion encounters. Remember back like 2 or 3 leagues ago when I did my Magic Find Burial Chamber with Legion, where I made like, I don't know how many hundreds exalts just from the Legion encounter. It's like insane. I'm definitely going to make a farming project with Legion again, as soon as I find a skill that can one-tap the entire Legion encounter. Then we have user interface improvements. All costs for notable passive skills can now be revealed by holding Alt when hovering over the passive. That should be good. Map, I mean, we always saw that on Path of Building. So basically you hold down the Alt key, right? And mouse over in-game, and then you see what else you need. Should be okay, should be in the game for quite some time. Map icons in the map stash tab will now display which Atlas region they are when hovered over. That's great. Wasn't that in the game already? Map icons. We're gonna see. Stash tab list no longer closes after you select the tab. Who cares? Added new, or at least added the ability to hide, remove only stash tabs. This is something for standard, to be honest. But it's great because I have in standard over those 11 leagues that I've already played. I have like 200 or 300 stash tab when I go in standard. It's like, oof. I don't want to look at it, Something with hideout decorations, blah blah blah, error messages when your problems importing hideout template, and shit tons of bug fixes. Okay, that's it for my list. Okay, I know it has been a long video, but patch notes are patch notes, and GGG always brings a lot of changes, which is great, right? And trust me, the tons of bugs fixes that I mentioned there, it's like another 3 or 4 sites of just various things where like things that are not working as intended get balanced or at least like fixed. So I don't really want to go over that either. So otherwise that video would be even longer. So yeah, overall, final conclusions about the patch notes. As always, I like what they do, okay? I know that a lot of people are upset, especially those that were abusing, what I call abusing, Herald mechanics, and they're like, oh my god, my insane level 100, deathless, bazillion damage build is now dead, GGG, what the fuck, I'm not going to play this league, and so on. Don't forget that GGG is always doing those changes for the greater good, right? Only because you played a certain build or mechanic doesn't mean that other players do that too, right? GGG has all the data. They know exactly what people are looking for, what people are abusing, what people do not play and stuff, right? They have the data collection, and they're gonna build their patch notes and improvements to the game based on their calculations or informations, basically. And I'm always like super hyped when a new league starts, and I'm always looking forward to various things. I'm just hoping that they not gonna buff the two-handed weapons to infinity and everything else will be entirely shit, right? I'm looking forward to all these new brand things that I'm going to test in the next league, as well as the slam skins. There's going to be a lot of new things to test and to try. And as every league, it's going to be a lot of fun. But for my league starter and stuff like that, this will be a separate video probably tomorrow, where I'm just going to go over league start and specific ideas or mindset or achievements that I would like to share with you that you can basically follow on your own league start. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.